Hey everybody, Ron Burke, Editor-in-Chief for Gamingtrend.com. Before we get started, I want to apologize. You may hear some construction sounds. The show must go on. As you can see, we have all of the components assembled, minus one that'll be announced at CES shortly. So we're going to take all this stuff, slide it to the side, and take a closer look at the Lightbase 600 LX. This is the newest case from Be Quiet. We're going to take a look at the smaller version, and then in a separate video, we'll take a look at the larger version. So without further ado, let's get started. Now to preface this, I don't have an anechoic chamber. I don't have microscopic thermal measurement equipment. I do have thermal guns and I do have acoustic measuring devices. If you are looking for a more in-depth look at this case or other cases like it, I'm going to refer you to Steve Burke, not related to me, but one of the very few other journalists I do trust to actually measure these things adequately. So if you're looking for that kind of in-depth coverage, Steve is going to be your best bet. I'm going to do the best that I can with what I've got, and I think I do a pretty damn good job. I'll leave that to you to decide. I also want to point out my shirt. If you like any of the shirts that I show throughout this series, you can go to 80stees.com and you can find pretty much anything that you can imagine there. If you have a nostalgia itch, they're going to scratch it. So they're not a sponsor yet. So I don't have any sort of code for you to put in, but if you like any of the shirts that I'm wearing, you can find it right there. Let's get started. Again, not a sponsor, but I love this FlexiSpot desk. I do have a code there. Put in code Gamingtrend, and I think you get 10% off of the price. This sit-stand desk is fantastic for, obviously, my daily work, but it's also fantastic for craft tables. I also use it for my 3D printing. Can't recommend them enough. All right, we're gonna turn this sideways and get it out of the box. Here's a pro tip that decades of experience has taught me. If you wanna make this easier to pull something out of a box, flip the handles outside. If you leave those inside, it's inevitably going to grab something on the way out and you'll be struggling to pull the thing out. So flip those up, out it goes. Out of the box. Now, my most recent build was in a Be Quiet 900 series, and I love that case, but it's a very traditional case. It's a vertical case with mesh front, lots of room to build. The real difference for that case being quality. The entire chassis is metal, and there's a lot of flexibility in how you can set it up. There's a ton of room to build inside of it, no sharp edges. It's a very clean, traditional case. This Lightbase 600, and its bigger brother that we'll take a look at in another video, is their foray into something completely different. You can already see that this is not a traditional case. It's more wide than you might expect. And obviously that's gonna lean into that extra space for building. But it also has another trick that I think folks will really appreciate. This is totally valid. This is a totally valid setup for your system. Has that kind of fish tank look, but behold, as I set this up for it to be on its side. And we're done. There's really nothing else to do. Now I have a traditional case, kind of hearkening back to the days when we used to set our monitor on top of the case. I do not recommend that. This is glass, but just like that, we have now set this up for being on this orientation. With one exception, I do need to move the feet. We'll get into the feet when we take a closer look at it, but let's get this peeled and get it opened up. The screws on this case, and it's really not just this case, but every case, seems to use these. Now these screws will just hang there like this, loose, so they'll stay with the case and they're not going to fall off. You can unscrew them completely. My complaint is it's a very soft metal. I have stripped these more times than I can count, just hand tightening them. Occasionally you'll find, well, it's already started. I've got little flakes of metal here just from unscrewing that screw. This is not just a Be Quiet problem, this is a kind of industry-wide problem. We need to spend the extra quarter of a penny and upgrade these to something else. All right, let's get this open. As I mentioned, this is glass. There's a film on the underside, so we're gonna peel that as well. I'm hoping that that's where this scratch is, and I hope that it goes away. There we go. Nice and clean. So this has a metal frame, and it's not just glass sitting on top of pins to put screws in. I appreciate that. Metal should twist in a metal frame, not just have little rubber grommets. So this is a step forward. For drive bays, it'll support 4 2.5 inch, and 2 of them are included, and 2 3.5 inch, one's included. If you've used a previous Be Quiet case, it uses the same modular system, so you can reuse those cages from a previous case if you're so inclined. If you happen to be setting this up for something like a server of some sort where you're gonna have spinning discs, you've got space to do that. Continuing down the list here, it has light wings. It has 3 of these light wings. That's these lights right here, or 3 fans right here that are already lit. I use those light wings. They're pretty great. I gotta be honest, they're very quiet. They're very bright. You can address them. They're already pre-installed. You can move them, of course. You can put 2 more fans at up here on this part. When we're addressing the top and sides, I guess I'll have to be a little bit more specific and kind of touch where it is. So this top part here, you can put 2 140 millimeter fans or 3 120s up there. On the side, which is going to be right here, you've got the 3 120s already pre-installed. On the bottom, that's going to be this part here currently. You can do 2 140s or 3 120s, and in the rear you already have a pre-installed 120 right there. It's another light wing, so it's another addressable fan. Now, if you're not going with fans everywhere and you want to go with liquid cooling, I should say sealed liquid cooling, AIOs, you can put a 120, a 140, a 240, a 280, or even a 360 up here on top. So you can put a pretty beefy radiator in here. On the side, obviously you can pull these 120s and put a 120 millimeter AIO there, or a 240. On the bottom, you have the same support as the top, so 120, 140, 240, 280, or 360. And in the rear, you can put a small 120 there. Just depends on what you want to do on the inside of your case. I personally like an AIO for cooling my GPU, and then low and slow, large fans everywhere else to draw heat away. The orientation of this particular case obviously is going to change the airflow. How you want to kind of orient things, remember heat rises, so it might be best to leave these in place to draw heat up. Use the AIO and fans that are on your motherboard here to push air up, and then maybe get an east-west sort of thing where you're pulling air in here and pushing it out here. Removing this back panel, I guess it'd be the bottom technically, depending on your orientation. That won't get confusing at all. We have an integrated mesh screen. You can pop it out for cleaning by simply pushing up like that, and then this whole thing pops out like so. So you can clean that screen, put it back in. This is just simply vented, so we're talking good airflow here. Little tiny pins, but no actual obstructions, no designs or anything that would cause any sort of airflow issues. All clean. Pop that back in, pull it down, locks in place, good to go. You can also pop the feet out. That's these little grommets right here. You can pop those out. I'm not sure why you would. I guess you could maybe put in larger feet or something, but it does come off if you're so inclined. So let's take a closer look on this rear panel and see what's possible for installation and cable management. Heading inside the case, you have this part right here. So you've got these rubber pads. This is where you're going to mount your power supply. So it's going to sit right here. You can see that's all addressable from the back. So that's how you're going to hide your power supply and not have it kind of hanging out down here like you would see in a traditional case. It'll sit right there. So let's go ahead and remove the hard drive cage, and I'll show you that. Removing it's pretty easy. There's 3 screws. Once you've removed these 3, you'll see that it immediately comes loose. We're going to open this little vanity panel, and you can see that this now is freed and comes right out. So you can mount your hard drive here if you're still using spinning platters. There's little space for getting your cables in and out. So if you have a hard drive, that's where you're going to mount it. Speaking of mounting drives, on the back of this vanity panel you have 4 holes here and 4 holes here. That's for placing SSDs. So if you still have the square SSDs, this is where you're going to mount them. Now remember, spinning platter, 133 megs per second. Square SSDs, around 550 megs per second. M.2 drives, 5,000, 7,000. The new drives, all the way up to 10,000 or more. So unless you have a very good reason for these, kind of the cheap and deep stuff, like you're using maybe a Plex server, start to move away from these. M.2 drives save you a lot of headache. The next thing we're going to look at is this. This is an ARGB board, so you can plug in all of your addressable RGB devices. Let's get that out of there. All your addressable RGB devices can go in here. The second one is up here. You can see it's already populated. There's still 2 open slots, but if you have addressable RGB to put in here, you can put it right there or right there, and that'll allow you to control it with software and turn it whatever colors you like. You saw that there was an accessories box tucked inside that hard drive cage. So let's go ahead and open that. Looks like some replacement rubber grommets to possibly seal back here for airflow. All the rubber feet. Remember when I mentioned that even with their 900 series, it's all about quality? Well, this is one of the ways that they express that. See, as I said, rubber grommets, so you can use this for controlling airflow. Every kind of extra screw you could possibly want. Motherboard hold off. All sorts of goodies, right? All the rubber grommets. These are for your hard drives, so you can quiet things down. So if you have anything that's going to vibrate, you can put these in place to keep that quiet. And these other parts are for vertical GPU mounting. So all of this together, you'd normally have to buy this separately, but these are just included with the case. So if you intend to mount your GPU vertically, which there's plenty of room for that, you have all of the hardware in the box. Now the key to flipping this thing around are these little plastic feet. You can see that this has like a track tray system. So this little piece simply goes inside the track. There we go. Rotates in place. And now you have your feet placed on the bottom. Or the side, I guess in this case. So simply locks in place. These are pretty sturdy. There's no gap. I don't see these being a problem. Little rubber feet ensures that you're not scratching any surfaces. This seems like a simple and effective, design for making this thing reversible. So, if I wanted to place this in vertical mode, obviously I need to pull those off. I'm going to steal one of these feet. And just like that, now that's the bottom. So very simple design. I'm pretty impressed. These are very tight, so I don't see them moving. All in all, a great design. When you are installing your AIO, you can also remove this top piece. Simple as that. That lifts off. As you can see, it has that same sort of mesh design as we saw on the side panel. But with that out of the way, you have easy access to be able to mount your AIO or fans, whatever works for you, all along here to direct your airflow up and out. If you are inclined to remove the front, you can remove this glass. There are a pair of screws here that allows it to simply slide off. I don't see a purpose in that, so we're going to leave that part out, but just know that you can. As I was buttoning this up to finish my thoughts, I did run into one other thing that I was kind of surprised to see. There's a pretty significant gap. We're all the way locked in here, right? I can seal this up. Let's try that again. There we go. Even all screwed in, there's a pretty significant gap here. So I'm not sure what that's going to do for airflow, maybe nothing, but I would have expected like a rubber grommet or something like that. Very easy to add myself, which is exactly what I'm going to do. I don't want that, so we'll be sealing that up with just a simple strip of kind of weatherproofing, but that's a miss. Heading around the front, we have all of your I/O. This does lean into a personal pet peeve of mine. They're not labeled. So which one is reset, which one is power, which one is RGB? Don't know. So this is really the only drawback that I've found with this case is just label your buttons. This is not helpful. I do want to go through the I/O here because I think it's important that you know what's on the front of your case. I'm going to read it just to make sure that I'm complete. One USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type 2. So that's going to be right there. That's going to be your fastest port right there. Right below it we have one of the USB 3.2 Type A. So this is going to be slightly slower. I think if I remember correctly, 10 gigs, no, 20 gigs, 10 gigs? I'll have to look that up. Here's the second one, and then we have an audio jack, and as I mentioned, your 3 mystery buttons. If I had to venture a guess, the one with the nub on top is probably power, or maybe, I don't know. I don't want to guess, and that's kind of the point. So really I found the only drawback that I have with this case, and that is unlabeled buttons. I don't know what these things do. Maybe that's on, reset, RGB. I shouldn't have to look in the manual. There's one other thing to mention. While black goes with everything, if you're trying to build that Stormtrooper case, you're going to want a different color. Thankfully, they do offer this case and its larger brother in both black and white, so you have an option. If you happen to be building a system that has rear side connectors, and let me tell you, that is the future. I hope that motherboard manufacturers jump on that. This case also has compatibility for that type of motherboard. There is a rear port for you to connect all of your cables through the rear. So if you happen to have one of those motherboards, this case will do the trick. The last stop on any review from us is always price and warranty, because I think those things are important. This is an all steel chassis. I doubt you're gonna have any problems, but Be Quiet does warranty the device for 3 years. I've yet to have a problem with any of my Be Quiet cases, so I don't think you're gonna use it, but it is nice that they stand behind their product. The price, the MSRP I believe is $185, but there's no point in even looking at that. I've already seen them on sale, in fact, right now for $149. So if you're just looking around, I bet you're gonna find this case at around $149. I suspect there'll be deep deals on things like Christmas or who knows, President's Day, or who knows, Toyotathon. There'll be some sort of price break on this, but even at $150, that is a really solid price for as much as this case has to offer. Now, obviously, I'm not building inside this case. I'm going to build inside of its larger brother. So all of our acoustic tests, our airflow tests, all of that will be done on that system. But I did want you to get a good look at this case because I think it's an excellent buy for a mid-size system. So I'm Ron Burke, Editor-in-Chief for Gamingtrend.com. Thanks for joining us for this unboxing. Look for the rest of our unboxings that eventually culminate in the larger build.